Imagine an invisible thread stretched throughout history, connecting secret organizations, hidden philosophies, and a persistent effort to influence humanity's view of God. From dark gatherings in clandestine societies to political decisions quietly swaying the tide of mass consciousness, there appears to be some secret order that has always existed, always operating behind the scenes. This isn't just a spine-tingling story about darkness or sensational anecdotes intended to frighten. It's a call to venture into a world where human will, religious belief, and our perception of the sacred have been manipulated over centuries. And the name often whispered? The Illuminati. When you hear the word Illuminati, you might think of conspiracies about a pyramid with an all-seeing eye at its summit. However, the reality, if one might use that term, is far more complex. The Illuminati's war on God, how a secret order caused global atheism, addresses a topic that few dare to explore fully, for it touches on humanity's deepest notions of divinity, theology, and spiritual origin. Yet despite the faint historical traces and many ecclesiastical or political conflicts, one red thread remains. Some force has labored to strip humans of faith in God, or at least to weaken that faith until it becomes only a hazy idea in people's minds. To truly grasp the layers of meaning, we must look back at the historical context in which atheism gradually surfaced. Remember that there was a time when humankind lived in an era where God or various deities was the center of all life's activities. Everything from sowing seeds to warfare, even legal systems bore a divine stamp. So how did a large portion of humanity turn away from the idea of God? What spurred the awakening toward materialism? And how did it lead to the widespread atheism we now see in modern society? Some scholars suggest that it was a result of the scientific revolution. As humankind discovered the physical and chemical laws governing nature, people began to question religious myths. But from an esoteric point of view, that only scratches the surface of the iceberg. Beneath, there were certain groups, orders, lines of thought operating quietly, sowing the seeds of philosophical premises that would encourage the denial of God. Their purpose? Possibly to unify ideologies, undermine moral foundations, or seize control of human spirituality. The Illuminati, thought to have formed in the late 18th century in Bavaria, Germany, is often seen as a part of this grand plan. Many accounts depict the Illuminati as a secret society aiming to overthrow every institution, including religion. Naturally, there are accusations that they infiltrated numerous churches, Masonic lodges, governments, and global financial circles. But what's the essence here? Perhaps this war is orchestrated by individuals with a vision to destroy humanity's faith in God in order to establish a secular order where God is pushed to the sidelines. Or perhaps something even deeper lies hidden, seen through a hermetic lens which venerates the all and the unity of everything. Belief in a single God might be considered an obstacle to complete intellectual freedom. Or perhaps the Illuminati, in the eyes of some defenders, is not fighting God at all, but liberating human beings from the shackles of dogma. That's the crucial twist. It's tough to verify precisely what the real Illuminati believes, or if it even exists in an organized manner. Still, the notion that they're waging a war on God continues to resonate in certain circles. Instead of debating whether the Illuminati truly exists, let's focus on the outcome. Atheism has been on the rise worldwide. From Europe to the Americas, in sprawling urban centers and remote rural areas alike, an increasing number of people no longer believe in any deity. Is this merely a natural product of the scientific era, or a deliberate strategy by a secret order to manipulate spirituality? There's no definitive answer, but we can glimpse fragments of a grander puzzle. If we think of God as a central energy or supreme consciousness, then distancing humanity from God is akin to severing them from a spiritual power source. Once separated, humans become machines of consumption, mere brains that work and follow orders, stripped of spiritual mission. Any force aspiring to rule the world would doubtless prefer a population that is godless, or at least spiritually apathetic, because then people aren't concerned with any moral code or universal plan that transcends societal laws. Put simply, a population that lacks a higher reference point can be more easily manipulated by worldly slogans and commands. Throughout history, we've seen how certain tyrants ascended, simply because the masses lacked faith in something greater than themselves. Throughout many historical periods, religious faith has been assailed sometimes by revolutionary movements, other times by materialist philosophies. The French Revolution waged battle against the Catholic Church, and later, communism established its foundation on atheism. But is this a coherent conspiracy, or just a chain reaction of historical processes? Some researchers propose that invisible hands have shaped ideologies across eras, planting seeds of religious doubt to weaken humanity's spiritual strength. For instance, consider the major events of the 20th century: World War I, World War II, the Cold War. Each cataclysmic conflict distanced people from the divine worldview, many crying out, "If there is a God, why does he allow this?" As a result, people increasingly reject the concept of God altogether, concluding that everything is a random, brutal series of events, so they adhere to materialist philosophies. Meanwhile, if Illuminati, or a similar secret group, aims at severing humanity from every spiritual foundation, they might rejoice as large swaths of people turn their backs on any divine standard. Another perspective: this war against God might be better understood as a war against the soul. Faith in God frequently accompanies an awareness of the soul, an afterlife, and life's overarching purpose. Rob humanity of that faith, and we reduce them to one-dimensional beings, believing only in scientific formulas, ignoring the possibility of spirit. Then, men can be seduced by material comforts and ephemeral power, effectively selling their souls for short-term benefits. Philosophically, the shift from a God-centered universe to one devoid of the divine yields numerous effects. One may cite Nietzsche's declaration, "God is dead," which helped birth existentialism and separate humans from absolute ideals. Freud, Marx, and Darwin each contributed to the foundation of materialism, whether consciously or not, reinforcing the notion that the universe is purely physical. Meanwhile, certain occult fraternities, esoteric Christianity, Hermeticism, Gnosticism, etc., preserve strong devotion to the sacred, but remain underground, possibly because their light is dangerous to a new world order of so-called human liberation. So, who is truly superstitious here? Those who believe in God, or those who claim that humans are just advanced animals, with no spirit, only chemical processes in the brain? That question highlights the two camps, the faithful and the atheist. Also note, the success or failure of these conspiracies is not absolute. Indeed, there are cultures and societies still deeply religious. But, undeniably, in many developed urban areas, particularly in the West, there's an undeniable wave of religious retreat. Perhaps that is the Illuminati triumph. People's faith in a living God has faded into something superficial or optional. On a deeper level, if they exist, some group or individuals striving for a war on God, they must have profound insight into human psychology, aware of the brain's weak points, and exploit them to steer spiritual convictions. They realize humankind loves knowledge, so they emphasize scientific explanations to deny the spiritual. They know we relish entertainment, so they saturate us with a pop culture that glorifies material pleasures over spiritual reflection. They know we fear, so they stage crises and wars that corrode faith in a benevolent God. Step by step, the masses drift from any concept of the divine, becoming simpler to govern. At the same time, the war on God might well be mirrored by awakened souls, quiet individuals, preserving or rediscovering the spiritual dimension. They represent the antithesis of the so-called Illuminati plan, by sowing seeds of yearning for the divine in people's hearts. Indeed, modern times have witnessed a renaissance of religion and spirituality: yoga, meditation, holistic therapies. Maybe that's because humankind inherently cannot live without spiritual transcendence. Additionally, modern science, alleged to be a tool to dethrone God, begins to reveal new questions about consciousness. energy fields, and near-death experiences. Each of these phenomena might revalidate old notions about a greater, intangible order, reminiscent of believing in a god or cosmic consciousness. So ironically, scientific knowledge might not finalize atheism, but in some corners, is reigniting interest in the possibility of divine presence. Returning to the central theme, the Illuminati's war on God, how a secret order caused global atheism, we might see that from a spiritual vantage, any orchestrated effort to dethrone God is truly about severing humankind from its divine essence. Once men lose that sense of higher calling, they become self-centered, fixated on the ephemeral. They also get easily subjugated by worldly powers. Meanwhile, historically, whenever a single individual reconnects to spiritual truth, that person becomes ungovernable by fear or manipulations. Hence, the conflict is timeless, waged both externally political, social, and internally in each heart. Critics ask whether Illuminati truly orchestrated all this, or whether everything is simply historical evolution. Yet from the vantage of certain esoteric teachings, clear patterns of controlling the populace can be observed, indicating that fear and manipulation can be systematically used to undermine cosmic awareness. We also see how atheism has penetrated many minds. People might still half-heartedly hold religious customs, but they no longer wholeheartedly believe in a real God. Perhaps that demonstrates the victory of an Illuminati-led worldview. Men see religion as merely a cultural relic or moral code, rather than a gateway to transcendent reality. They might recognize religion's moral guidelines, but not a living divinity. But we can't forget that universal longing for something more. Even the staunch atheist occasionally gazes at the stars and wonders about the infinite. The war on God is waged inside every heart. On one side, we are pulled by reason, material existence, and the tangible. On the other side, we sense there's a mysterious something that eludes our definitions. If indeed an order like the Illuminati is behind all this, they presumably operate quietly, meticulously. They shape public opinion by controlling educational content, media, and cultural norms, incrementally eroding references to the sacred. They foster a viewpoint that man is an isolated being in a vast, indifferent cosmos. If men accept that, they lose the impetus to connect with something greater, thereby turning docile under the dictates of ephemeral powers. Interestingly enough, the growth in depression, anxiety, and addiction might signal that tearing humankind from spiritual meaning leads to a sense of inner emptiness. It is right at that emptiness that illusions of consumerism or manipulative ideologies can easily take root. As the concept of God recedes, consumer culture ascends. Are we content with that bargain? Hence, the Illuminati's war on God can be perceived not merely as a conspiracy theory, but an ongoing psycho-spiritual struggle. Whether or not the Illuminati truly exist as a cohesive group, the phenomenon they represent, a systematic attempt to dim faith in the divine manifests. Humans find themselves in a battle over whether or not to accept any spiritual dimension. Without such acceptance, man is just an advanced ape, easily manipulated by technology, media, and ephemeral promises. At the close of this reflection, the deeper lesson emerges. If the war on God is indeed real, either orchestrated by a secret order or simply an outgrowth of modern secularization, it compels us to defend our spiritual essence more fervently. Our faith in the divine or in some transcendent reality might be the last barrier protecting us from total mental subjugation, because from the vantage of a truly awakened spirit, no worldly authority can fully enslave or crush one's soul. Thus, no matter whether you interpret the Illuminati as literal or symbolic, the moral stands. The human quest for a higher presence remains essential. Should we let ourselves be gradually pulled away from spiritual consciousness? Or do we rekindle that flame, find meaning beyond the physical dimension, and preserve our link to the infinite source? That is the question. After all, if they are truly waging war on God, the best defense is to rediscover the divine within ourselves. Once that spark is awakened, external powers lose their grip, because in the presence of authentic spiritual insight, illusions crumble. And so ends this exploration. May it spark curiosity, if not clarity, regarding the possibility that behind historical events lies a deeper, more subtle drama. The drama of whether humankind acknowledges its spiritual inheritance or surrenders it under the weight of material illusions. The call remains: resist the dissolution of faith, for in preserving your connection to the divine, you preserve your ultimate freedom.